Hey, fellas, I'm Gregory, 58 years old, and I've got a story that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about marriage. For 12 years, I thought my wife Eleanor and I had the perfect life. Stable, predictable, everything a man could want. But I was blind to the emptiness she felt, and it led her straight into the arms of another man's words. Stick around to hear how I missed the signs and what it cost me. Hit that like button if you've ever been blindsided in a relationship. And let's get into this. I met Eleanor in 2010 at a community fundraiser in our small Ohio town. I was 44. She was 38. A quiet woman with a guarded smile, carrying the weight of a tough childhood. She'd grown up with uncertainty, her dad leaving when she was young, her mom working endless shifts to keep them afloat. I admired her resilience, but what drew me in was her need for stability. I was a practical man, always had been. I worked as an accountant, lived by schedules, believed love was about providing, not talking about feelings. When we started dating, I thought I was giving her exactly what she needed. A steady life, a plan, a future. She seemed to agree. We got married a year later, in 2012, and I felt like I'd found my purpose, to be her rock. The early years were good, or so I thought. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where folks wave but don't pry. We settled into routines, me handling the finances, her managing the house. We didn't have kids, but we had a life, brick by brick, just like I'd planned. I worked long hours, brought home a steady paycheck, made sure the bills were paid and the future was secure. I thought that was enough. I didn't talk much about feelings, never saw the point. Love, to me, was keeping the ship steady, not whispering sweet nothings. Eleanor tried to bring it up once, maybe 5 years in. I feel like something's missing, she said one night, her voice soft, uncertain. I listened, nodded, then suggested we plan a vacation to Florida. Thought it'd fix whatever was bothering her. She didn't bring it up again, so I figured we were fine. That was my first mistake. Years passed, and I didn't notice the distance growing between us. Conversations turned functional. Schedules, bills, grocery lists. I'd ask about her day. She'd answer in short sentences, and I'd move on. I didn't see the need to dig deeper. As long as the house was in order, the accounts balanced. What was there to talk about? But Eleanor was changing, and I was too busy keeping things steady to see it. She started going out more, saying she was visiting a bookstore downtown. I didn't think much of it. Thought it was her way of unwinding. I'd stay home, go over spreadsheets, watch the game, never imagining she was finding something I couldn't give her. Then I met Samuel, not in person, not at first, but through the cracks in Eleanor's behavior. She'd come home late, her eyes brighter than they'd been in years, a faint smile on her face I hadn't seen since our early days. She'd hum to herself, lost in thought, and I'd catch her staring out the window like she was somewhere else. I didn't ask questions. Didn't want to seem controlling, but I noticed, one evening, after another silent dinner, I watched her from across the living room. She was sitting on the couch, staring at the walls, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice gruff. She nodded, forced a smile. "Yeah," she said, but her eyes said something else. I should have pressed, should have asked more, but I let it go. That was my second mistake. It wasn't until later that I pieced it together. Eleanor had been spending her days at that bookstore, talking to a man named Samuel. I found out by accident, flipping through her phone one night while she was in the shower. Not because I suspected anything, but because I needed to check a text from her sister. There it was, a message from Samuel Bookstore. "I'm leaving next week. Can we meet one last time?" My stomach dropped. I scrolled up, saw months of messages, nothing physical, nothing explicit, but the kind of words that cut deeper. "You make me feel seen." She'd written, "I've never had conversations like this." He'd replied. I put the phone down, my hands shaking, and sat there in the dark, trying to make sense of it. She hadn't slept with him, hadn't even kissed him, but she'd given him something she'd stopped giving me. Her heart. The next day, I confronted her, not with anger, but with a question I'd never thought to ask. We were in the kitchen, her washing dishes, me sitting at the table. "You've been different lately," I said, my voice steady but heavy. She froze, her hands still in the soapy water. "Different how?" she asked, not turning around. "Distant," I said. I took a breath, then asked the question that had been clawing at me all night. "Are you happy?" "Eleanor, with us." She turned slowly, her eyes wide, like I'd caught her off guard. "That's not an easy question," she said finally. "That's not what I asked." I pressed. She looked down at the floor, then back at me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I am." The silence that followed was suffocating. I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. I'd spent 12 years building a life I thought was perfect, but I'd missed the most important part. Her. "Is there someone else?" I asked, my voice cracking. She didn't answer, just looked away. And in that moment, I knew. She didn't need to say his name. I already knew it was Samuel. I didn't yell, didn't throw things. I just sat there, the realization sinking in like a slow bleed. I'd been so focused on keeping things steady that I hadn't noticed her drifting away. Now, fellas, if you've ever missed the signs in your own relationship, drop a comment below. Just say I've been there. I'll read everyone and reply. Keep listening, because I'm going to tell you how I handled this betrayal and what it taught me about myself. This is part 1 of my story, so hit that subscribe button and check back tonight for part 2. The tension in our house grew thicker with every passing day. We moved around each other like strangers, careful not to touch the wound that had opened between us. I couldn't stop thinking about Samuel, about how Eleanor had let him into her world while shutting me out. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew we couldn't keep pretending. One evening, as she was cleaning up after dinner, I sat at the kitchen table, watching her. I could feel the weight of her distraction, the way she moved like she was somewhere else. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "You've been different lately," I said, my voice steady but heavy. She turned, her hands still holding a dish, and looked at me. "Different how?" she asked, her tone guarded, distant. I said, "Like you're not really here." She could have denied it, could have told me I was imagining things, but she didn't. Instead, she set the dish down and asked, "Are you happy?" "Gregory." The question caught me off guard. I blinked, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Us. This marriage. Are you happy?" I frowned, my fingers tapping lightly against the table. "We have a good life." "Eleanor." She shook her head, her eyes searching mine. "That's not what I asked." I hesitated, then sighed. "I thought we were—" My answer told her everything. She'd been pretending, and so had I. She sat down across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Gregory, I don't know if I am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice calm. "Is there someone else?" The question sent a jolt through her. I saw it in the way her eyes widened, the way her breath caught. She opened her mouth to deny it, but then she looked away. And in that moment, I knew. She didn't have to say his name. I already knew it was Samuel. I didn't get angry, didn't yell. I just sat there, the realization sinking in like a stone. "I see," I said finally, my voice hollow. The days that followed were a blur of quiet tension. We barely spoke, each of us grappling with the truth that had finally come to light. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. One night, I broke the silence. We were sitting in the living room, the TV off, the house too quiet. "I don't want to be in a marriage where you feel trapped," I said, looking at her. She looked up, surprised, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you," I continued, my voice steady. "And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I loved you in the only way I knew how, and maybe that wasn't enough." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't speak. I held up a hand, stopping her before she could say anything. "I'm not asking for explanations. I just want the truth. Do you want to leave?" She took a deep breath, searching for the answer I could see she'd been avoiding. Then, finally, she spoke. "I think I already have." The words hung between us, final and unchangeable. I nodded, my expression unreadable, then stood up and walked away. Just like that, the life we'd built together came to an end. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic betrayal, but with the quiet acceptance that sometimes love isn't enough. The divorce was quick, almost surgical in its precision. No dramatic fights, no bitter exchanges. Just two people unraveling a life they'd built together. I moved out first, renting a small apartment downtown. Eleanor stayed in the house for a while, but eventually, she left too, sold the place and moved to a different city. I heard Samuel had left town long before our marriage ended, off to another city for work. Eleanor never reached out to him, as far as I know, and he never came back. But this story isn't about Eleanor or Samuel. It's about me. After the divorce, I had to face some hard truths. I'd spent my life thinking stability was enough, that love was about providing, not connecting. I'd been so focused on keeping everything in order that I'd forgotten to ask Eleanor what she needed, what she wanted. I'd ignored her when she tried to tell me, and that was on me. But her betrayal, her emotional affair with Samuel, that was on her. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't deserve to be blindsided like that. It took months of soul searching to realize I wasn't just a victim in this. I'd played a part in letting our marriage drift apart. I started over, piece by piece. I took a solo trip to the Smoky Mountains, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I hiked trails, fished in quiet streams, and sat by campfires under the stars, thinking about the man I'd been and the man I wanted to be. I joined a local men's group in Columbus, guys my age who met every week to talk about life, work, relationships. At first, I just listened. But eventually, I opened up about Eleanor, about the betrayal, about my own shortcomings. They didn't judge. They shared their own stories. And for the first time, I didn't feel so alone. I even picked up a new hobby, woodworking. I built a bookshelf for my apartment, then a coffee table, finding peace in the rhythm of sawing and sanding. Today, I'm a different man. I'm still practical, still value stability, but I've learned to listen, to ask questions, to connect. I'm not dating, not ready for that yet, but when I do, I'll be a better partner. I've forgiven Eleanor, not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. I don't know where she is now, and I don't need to. I'm not defined by who I loved, who I stayed for, or who I left behind. I'm just Gregory. And for the first time in years, that's enough. Here's what I learned, fellas, and I want you to hear this loud and clear. First, don't ignore the signs. If something feels off in your relationship, ask the hard questions, even if you're afraid of the answers. Second, love isn't just about providing, it's about connecting, listening, being there. Third, betrayal hurts, but it doesn't have to break you. Use it to rebuild yourself, to become a better man. And finally, don't let someone else's choices define your worth. I could have spent years hating Eleanor, but instead, I chose to grow. I'm sharing this story because I know there's a man out there who needs to hear it. If you've been betrayed, if you've lost someone you thought you'd grow old with, don't let it destroy you. Let it make you stronger. Drop your story in the comments. I want to know how you've handled a betrayal like this. I'll pick one to share next week, so make it real. Hit that subscribe button, and check out the video next to this one. There's more true stories waiting. Share this with your buddies too. We all need to know we're not alone in this fight.